Hello and welcome to the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from 104.9 FM. I'm Paul Kretschmer. We're going to talk about COVID-19, coronavirus, and the impact it has on the persecution of Christians around the world. My guest today is Dede Laugersen, founder of an organization called Save the Persecuted Christians.
Thanks, Paul. Save the Persecuted Christians monitors anti-Christian violence worldwide, and we're very concerned that the coronavirus is definitely impacting religious liberties for people around the world. The U.S. International Commission on Religious Freedom, also known as USCIRF, released a fact sheet about 2 weeks ago, shortly after the pandemic was announced and the United States took action against it. And so what you're seeing around the world is obviously the suspension of religious services, whether they're Christian or other, and that is certainly impacting people around the globe. But most concerning is that the world's attention has turned away from the issue of persecution to obviously the coronavirus and everything that, all the fallout from that. But under this cover of darkness, the persecutors are able to exploit the situation and act with greater impunity than they have before. So we are seeing an uptick in issues for Christians around the world. For instance, earlier this week in Nepal, which is a Hindu-majority country with only about 2% of Christians in the population. This week, a pastor who has been creating online videos for YouTube since 2015, he had a service in which he was praying against the coronavirus and rebuking the disease and praying for healing. And shortly after that went live on YouTube, he was arrested for falsely for giving his congregants and others false information about the coronavirus, that it could be prayed away, that people could be healed through prayer. So that's one specific example of how coronavirus affects religious freedom. We're hearing that same story out of India and other places as well, that a Christian's natural response to a pandemic such as this and other issues with health, to pray for healing, is being seen by some of these regimes that are responsible for the persecution of Christians and others of faith, that they are taking this opportunity to hammer the Christians specifically who believe that healing comes from the Lord, and that the virus itself and other ailments can be significantly impacted through prayer.
It occurs to me that there are countries all around the globe, particularly in the Middle East, for instance, or in the Far East even, I suppose, where the authorities take an outsized view of the perceived threat of Christians, especially in those areas where, not only in areas where there is a significant population of Christians, such as in South Korea, but also in places like Iran, for instance, or other areas where the population may be small, but the authorities seem, as I say, the authorities seem to take an outsized view of the threat that even small groups represent to their regime. And at times like this, they're likely to take the pandemic and, in effect, use it as a tool to persecute people that they would be persecuting anyway, but giving it a special edge because of the events that scare people who do not know either how the disease comes or how it can be dealt with.
Well, you're absolutely right. And Iran is a very good example of this. Iran has released about 100,000 prisoners from the various prisons where the coronavirus specifically is hitting very hard. But the prisoners that they have kept, many of them are Christians who have been given long sentences, maybe over 5 years, for their evangelizing or just for being a Christian who converted from a Muslim background. These regimes see these Christians as working with international interests, of being subversive to the regime, and really they are political prisoners. But these are the prisoners that Iran is keeping in their prisons. So there's definitely a call for Iran to be proactive, to let these prisoners free, because they haven't committed any violent acts, but the regime sees them as subversive, working against the regime, a threat to the regime. And so these are the prisoners, not the violent ones who have been let go, but the Christians who generally are peaceful and would be contributing to the overall well-being of society. These are the ones who are being kept.
And I suppose, based on what you just said, regimes like that fear the Christians, the ones who are witnessing but not violent, not suggesting overthrow or anything of that, because the regime understands that people will listen to that kind of message of hope and healing and redemption, whereas even people within a country like Iran perhaps may not necessarily identify with the violent ones, because they see violence as something that would be focused at them, and that's not the kind of person they would want to be. But a Christian, on the other hand, has many attributes because of a believer's relationship with Jesus Christ that actually are desirable, and that's what gets in the craw of the regime.
Well, absolutely. Christians in these countries, they show personal responsibility. They are salt and light. They bring goodness. And so when you have Christians actively working in a community, they're the ones who are giving, they're the ones who are taking care of, and that is a specific threat to a regime that wants to be the only caretaker of the people. So Christians draw away from the power of the regime by providing the goods and the care and the comfort that the regime itself would be wanting to be seen as the only provider for that.
In areas outside of North America or Europe, are there still regimes, whether they're Hindu or Muslim or Buddhist or other religious followings, who continue to perceive in large measure Christianity as a Western religion, something antithetical to their own background and traditions and culture? And that's one of the reasons why, for instance, in India, for instance, or in Nepal, as you mentioned a moment ago, that's the reason why regimes like that come down so hard on Christianity?
Yes, all over the Middle East, into India, China, all of these areas, and even West Africa, they have pushed the propaganda that Christianity is not a religion that is a part of the country's cultural history. But people have failed to understand the history of Christianity is that Christianity spread east before it went west and into Europe. So Christianity has a long history of being in India, in China, even into Japan, in the earliest centuries of Christianity.
Dede Laugersen will return tomorrow on behalf of Save the Persecuted Christians. For further information, call us at 860-346-1049. The opinions expressed are those of the participants, not necessarily those of the staff or management of this station. I'm Paul Kretschmer on the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from WIHS, Middletown.